Imagine for a moment that genius isn't a type of person, but a way of thinking. Many people believe they were born with a brain bad at learning, as if the mind came with a permanent factory label. But that's just the snapshot of a brain that got used to working in only one way, usually a lazy, automatic way, untrained for deep thinking. The good news? The brain is plastic, highly plastic, a living muscle that reorganizes itself when we demand more from it. Neuroplasticity, that elegant word that sounds like it came from a futuristic lab, basically says, if you train me, I change. It doesn't matter your age, academic history, or how many traumatic report cards you have from the past. The mind learns to learn, and that means intelligence, focus, and depth aren't destiny, they're practice. But here's a detail almost no one tells you. Reprogramming the way you think takes time, months, maybe years. But the difference is, when it changes, it really changes. And that's what transforms someone ordinary into the type of person who understands quickly, connects ideas, solves problems, and learns without suffering. To start, we need to answer, what exactly makes someone seem like a genius? Usually, two things stand out. Off-the-charts memory. It's not magic. It's the result of how information was encoded the first time. A bad memory almost always comes from a bad first contact. Deep understanding. The ability to take an idea and work with it like it's clay, twist it, compare it, test it, apply it, transform it. The combination of these two factors creates the myth of the genius. But behind the myth, there's only method, and method can be learned. Now get ready, because we're going to dive into the internal engineering of this so-called deep understanding and reveal why most people don't think, they just repeat. Most people believe they've understood something simply because they recognized the words. But recognizing isn't understanding. It's just familiarity disguised as intelligence. The brain loves this trick. It shows you information. You think, oh, I know this, and boom, the mind closes the book before even really opening it. It's like seeing the cover of an airplane manual and thinking you can already fly. This kind of superficial thinking creates an illusion of knowledge that, deep down, prevents real learning. Deep understanding is born when you force your mind to explain, not just repeat. This is where the game changes. Explaining is dismantling an idea and reassembling it with your own pieces. It's transforming information into structure. When you explain something in your own words, the mind is forced to use real cognitive energy, and this activates the neural networks that consolidate memory, reasoning, and clarity. It's like switching from a weak flashlight to a spotlight. You see angles that weren't visible before. But there's another extremely dangerous cognitive trap: automatic thinking. The brain loves shortcuts because they save energy, but mental shortcuts are like trying to learn math using only magic tricks. They seem to work for a while, until you encounter a real problem and everything collapses. Thinking deeply requires effort and slowing down. It's the moment when you tell your brain, hold on, let's understand this properly. And that's when the miracle begins. But effort alone isn't enough. You need to ask the right question. The question that activates insight. The question that forces your brain to leave the surface. And that question is simple. Why is this true? This has been found repeatedly in studies on learning and appears as a critical mechanism for converting curiosity into solid understanding. When you ask why, your mind is pushed into the internal engineering of the idea. It's like opening the box and looking at the engine inside. You separate cause and effect, understand relationships, identify what matters, and discard what doesn't. It's a type of thinking that transforms an average student into someone capable of creating, improvising, and innovating. Another powerful practice is testing whether you really understood something by trying to apply it in a different context. If the idea only works in the original example, you memorized, you didn't learn. But if you can move the concept to another scenario, twist it a bit, adapt it, play with it, then your mind starts operating in genius mode. And here comes an important, almost amusing detail. The brain doesn't like to think deeply, but it loves the feeling of having understood something deeply. It's like climbing a mountain, tiring during, satisfying after. The difference is that when you really think, this after transforms everything. Memory improves, focus improves, reasoning improves, even your confidence changes. Now that you understand the danger of automatic thinking and the power of explaining, asking, and applying, let's move to the next layer: how to transform curiosity into a permanent learning engine. Curiosity isn't just a pleasant feeling, it's a biological force, a survival mechanism that pushes the brain to solve mysteries. But there's a secret here. Curiosity doesn't arise from what you already know, but from what you almost know. The mind gets hooked when it perceives a small gap, something within your reach but still outside your domain. It's the famous, "I almost got it." This gray zone is the spark that transforms interest into deep attention. And here's the crucial point. You can create this spark deliberately. How? By asking questions that create cognitive tension. Not anxiety, but that slight discomfort that makes the brain want to complete a pattern. Questions like, what am I missing? Which part of this still doesn't make sense? Or, if this were false, why would it be? Push your mind into an activity it normally avoids. Real investigation. When you investigate, the brain lights up areas connected to motivation, memory, and reward, and learning accelerates. But there's something even more interesting. Curiosity multiplies when you transform knowledge into a mental game. For example, trying to predict the next part of a concept before reading it, or trying to answer a question before seeing the answer. Neuroscience shows that when you try to guess something, even if you're wrong, your brain activates learning areas much more strongly than when you just receive information ready-made. Mistakes, in fact, are fuel for sophisticated learning. They create contrast, and contrast creates clarity. Another essential aspect is allowing yourself to play with ideas. Many people think serious reasoning requires rigidity, but the greatest insights come when you allow your mind to make unlikely connections. Playing intellectually is an elegant way of telling the brain, look for new patterns, and when it looks, it finds. But this play has one rule. You need to feel free to make mistakes. Without this freedom, the brain becomes defensive, rigid, trying to seem right instead of trying to understand. And here's the key that transforms curiosity into permanent skill. You must learn to fall in love with the question, not the answer. Answers are static. Questions are expansive. When you cultivate good questions, you create an internal engine that keeps running even after the video, class, or conversation ends. This is how genius minds operate. They don't accumulate answers. They manufacture irresistible questions. Now that you understand how to activate curiosity and convert it into real learning, we're ready to enter the region where genius really begins. The brain doesn't learn in large blocks. It learns in strategic fragments. The human mind wasn't made to absorb large blocks of information at once. It was made to break the world into small, manageable, meaningful pieces. When you try to learn something huge all at once, your brain goes into protection mode. It freezes, disperses, pushes everything away. But when you present content in smart fragments, almost like puzzle pieces, the brain does exactly the opposite. It approaches, organizes, and connects. Imagine this. Each piece of information is like a knot. The brain doesn't want to keep loose knots. It wants to tie them to each other to form a network. The more connections, the stronger the learning. That's why a powerful secret for training your mind like a brilliant mind is to fragment ideas until they become inevitable. When something is inevitable, the brain doesn't fight, it accepts. This is where an elegant technique comes in, the micro-block method. Instead of studying for 1 hour, you study for 5 minutes, but 5 minutes with intensity, clarity, and absolute focus on just one point. In this micro-block, you ask yourself, what's the essence? And what does this really mean? 5 well-used minutes are worth more than 50 poorly distributed minutes. The brain learns in focus, not in brute effort. Another essential principle is repetition with variation. Repeating exactly the same is boring for the brain, and everything boring gets erased. But when you repeat an idea by slightly changing the context, the brain registers it as something alive, relevant, applicable. That's why great masters explain the same thing in multiple ways. They don't repeat because they forgot. They repeat because they want you to remember. And here's a powerful image. Learning is like illuminating a dark room with a flashlight. With each small sweep of light, you see more details. You don't turn on all the lights at once. You explore. Genius is in the movement, not in the volume. Finally, there's a serious mistake that prevents thousands of people from learning well. They try to memorize before understanding. It's like trying to build walls without a foundation. When you understand, memory forms naturally. When you memorize, it evaporates. The right fragment, repeated the right way, with active curiosity, creates a mind that doesn't just learn, but transforms what it learns into powerful clarity. And now we're ready to explore something deep: how to transform this knowledge into real reasoning, the kind of thinking that solves problems, creates ideas, and sees patterns invisible to most. Reasoning well isn't thinking more, it's thinking better. Most people think intelligence is a brute force of the mind, a kind of hidden muscle. But truly powerful thinking doesn't come from effort, it comes from internal organization. A trained mind doesn't desperately chase answers, it creates pathways. Imagine that each problem is a closed box. The common mind tries to break open the box. The brilliant mind first tries to understand the shape of the lock. It doesn't waste energy, it directs energy. And reasoning is that, direction. One of the most elegant principles for training this kind of thinking is the mother question technique. Every complex question can be reduced to a simple question that organizes the chaos. You ask questions like, what's really happening here? What's the essential part of this? What do I need to ignore to understand? The mind gains clarity not when it adds more information, but when it removes noise. Another fundamental point: you only truly understand something when you can explain it with simple words. Not simple because you're limited, simple because you're deep. Complication is a disguise for confusion. Simplicity is the mark of comprehension. When your brain translates an idea to its most essential form, it's as if it's drawing an internal map. And a clear map is always more useful than a foggy landscape. Here's a powerful analogy. Thinking is like tuning an instrument. If you tune string by string, sound by sound, the music flows. If you try to play with everything out of tune, it becomes noise. So whenever your mind gets stuck, stop and tune a single string. Redefine focus. Formulate a central question. Eliminate an irrelevant detail. A tuned mind produces insights with little effort, almost as if it's hearing the answer instead of manufacturing it. And there's still a secret that few understand. Thinking is a physical art. Ideas only align when you get them out of your head. Speak out loud, draw, write scribbles, trace arrows. The mind is brilliant, but it's a terrible place to store loose thoughts. When you externalize, the brain frees up space and starts to see invisible relationships. Insight comes because you gave it space to be born. When you master this way of thinking, something powerful happens. Problems stop being monsters and become mechanisms. And when you understand the mechanism, you control the outcome. Now that you master clarity, let's advance to an even more sophisticated point: how to transform knowledge and reasoning into real creativity, that rare ability to see solutions where no one else is looking. Creativity isn't a magical talent reserved for geniuses. It's a specific way of combining information. The common mind looks for answers within the obvious. The creative mind takes pieces no one imagined together and builds something new. And when you learn this process, your mind starts producing ideas like breathing. The first key to creativity is accepting a simple fact. Your mind hates empty, so it fills spaces. If you create the right space, it fills with solutions. But if you live squeezed by anxiety, haste, and excess stimulation, it only fills with noise. Creativity is silence where a flash is. That's why moments of pause, shower, walk, coffee, looking out the window, are hidden laboratories of the brain. While you think you're not thinking, your mind is connecting wires that were previously separate. But it's not enough to wait for the flash. Creative insight is an active process, almost engineering. First you collect pieces, then you dismantle, then you recombine. A simple and powerful way to do this is to ask, what if I do the opposite? What if this works without this part? What element can I steal from another area and put here? The world's most creative minds don't invent from scratch. They transplant ideas. And here comes one of the most elegant techniques for training the mind like a genius: cognitive contrast. When you compare two distant ideas, physics and cooking, music and math, art and engineering, your mind creates bridges. And it's on these bridges that unique solutions are born. The more varied your repertoire, the more powerful your capacity for invention. A narrow mind creates little. A broad mind creates world. There's also an essential detail that almost no one understands. Creativity requires courage. Yes, courage, because every new idea seems silly before it seems brilliant. And whoever fears embarrassment never accesses their true creative potential. Fear blocks the flow. Curiosity releases it. The creative mind is the mind that allows itself to fail fast, test fast, adjust fast. Creating is playing with the unknown until it becomes familiar. And the most beautiful point of all, creativity isn't about being different. It's about being perceptibly useful. A genius idea isn't the most exotic. It's the one that solves something elegantly. Creativity is functional aesthetics. It's when the solution is so good it seems simple. But it only seems that way because you did the hard work of really thinking. Now that you master reasoning and creativity, let's enter the territory that separates common minds from extraordinary minds. How to transform knowledge, clarity, and creativity into real skill. The ability to learn anything quickly. Learning fast isn't a gift, it's method. And the method starts with a simple question that almost no one has the courage to ask. What exactly didn't I understand? It seems obvious, but observe. Most people fake comprehension to protect the ego, when precisely the act of admitting failure is what opens space for real understanding. The mind that learns isn't the one that seems intelligent, but the one that allows itself to investigate without shame. Accelerated learning works like assembling a puzzle. You don't need all the pieces to see the image, just the right pieces. That's why the trick is to locate the key points, the invisible structures that support everything else. When you understand the mechanism behind the phenomenon, you learn 10 times faster. It's like discovering the magician's trick. After you see it, you never unsee it. And here's a detail that changes everything. Asking is smarter than answering. Each well-made question stretches the brain, forces clarity, and reveals shortcuts. So think now, really think. What subject in your life haven't you mastered yet because you never asked the right question about it? Hold that reflection for a moment.
The ability to learn also depends on the skill of breaking complex subjects into smaller, chewable blocks.
The most common mistake is trying to understand everything at once and drowning the brain. Don't do that. Instead ask, what's the smallest part of this I can understand now, and then build on top. A brilliant mind doesn't run, it stacks. But none of this works if you don't apply the maximum rule of learning. Teach to understand. When you explain something in your own words, the brain is forced to organize the idea, detect holes, correct flaws. Each explanation is a workout. Each explanation makes you sharper. The more you teach, the more you learn, even if no one's listening. Now, I want you to do something for yourself. What skill have you been postponing learning because it seems too difficult? Write it in the comments. Yes, write it. I read all of them, absolutely all of them. And if you leave your difficulty there, I can help you dismantle that skill into simple, clear steps that finally make sense. Because the truth is this, the distance between you and your next great competency isn't talent, it's method, and you're learning the method. By this point, you've realized an exceptional mind isn't born ready. It's built, piece by piece, decision by decision. And the most interesting thing is that after you change the way you think, the world starts to change with it. Not because it got easier, but because you got clearer, sharper, more capable. The brain loves whoever challenges it with kindness, loves when you ask better questions, loves when you break big problems into small parts, loves when you explain something out loud as if illuminating your own darkness. That's the real training. That's the secret that separates those who want to learn from those who actually learn. And if you got this far, that already says something powerful about you. Your mind wants to grow. And when a mind wants to grow, nothing holds it back. Now I want to make you a direct invitation. What was the biggest insight you had today? Write it in the comments. I read all of them, and I respond whenever I can. Sometimes a single sentence from you gives me the chance to guide you on the right path. If this video helped you, provoked you, or made you think, then do this now. Like the video, because this takes this message to other people who need it as much as you do. And if you want to continue training your mind with me, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, each video is designed to expand your thinking, accelerate your learning, and bring you closer to your best version. Not the perfect version, but the possible version, built day after day. Thank you for being here. Now go out there and use your mind, not as a spectator, but as the author of your own thinking. See you in the next video.